When you're finished your painting, make sure to ask for a reflection form. The first thing I need you to do is check your work and make sure that you've done each of these objectives to the best of your ability, so that because the marking period's over next week, and I'm gonna start grading your painting. So the first objective is to I creatively interpreted my chosen composition of an aerial perspective. Okay, so did you think outside the box when you were interpreting the shapes that are in your composition? Did you come up with your own creative spin on your composition? Then you can choose between poor, needs work, average, good, or excellent. The second one is craftsmanship. Okay, craftsmanship is how neat and clean your design is. So did you stay in the lines? Did you paint everything completely? Um, then three is, do you have realistic and abstract elements in your aero painting? So while you are able to choose where you wanted certain colors to go, there should be elements of both in your painting. So, for instance, realistic elements might be adding in specific details to the landscape, whether depending on how far away the viewpoint was, that might be a texture. Okay, it could be a shadow. Then abstract elements would be your color choices, and maybe how you enhanced or exaggerated the landscape. Four is how do you organize your color choices in order to create visual tempo and harmony. So like I said, your colors should bounce around your composition. It shouldn't just be all warm colors in one place, all cool colors in another place. Your eyes should be able to move around the composition, and it should look like it should look balanced and with harmony. And then five is that you demonstrated focus and effort during instruction, art making, and cleanup. So after you fill out your rubric, we're going to move on to this. You might have done it once or twice before, but I'm going to go explain each element of the description, analyze, interpret, and judge. In the future, you might have to write an essay. For this, you can just write underneath on these lines. So I'm going to give you some things that are universal to everyone that you can write in your answers as you go, while you're looking at your own painting. And then I'll also might talk about another painting in comparison so that you better understand the meaning of what they're asking you. So the first step is to describe your artwork. So in this step, a lot of people overthink it. It actually means exactly what I'm going to say, which is, what do you see in your artwork? So in everyone's artwork, you should have a medium. Okay, your medium was the tempera watercolor. Okay, some people might have color pencils or oil pastels in theirs. Okay, you also use the artisan paper, and you also used white compressed charcoal in order to transfer your image. So those are all, medium is what makes up the painting. So those are all things that you use as a medium. Everyone's scale, the size of their painting, are all 9 inches by 12 inches. The subjects, some of your subjects on the photograph, if you flip it over, there's a piece of masking tape that says what yours is of or where it is. So it could say flower fields in Holland or ice formations in Iceland. That would be your subject. So in this painting, I would say the subject is a river with fields and several trees. That's the subject. Then the influences have to do with maybe an artist or art movement that we studied. So in this particular painting assignment, we were looking at Wayne Thiebaud's aerial viewpoints of landscapes. So that's your influence. That's the reason behind your painting. So We looked at aero paintings. And we looked at Wayne Thiebaud and his aerial landscapes. Okay, so those are all things that should be written in complete sentences in the description part of this worksheet. So hopefully as you're watching the video, fill out the worksheet so that you have it completed to the best of your ability. Okay, for analyze. Analyze is probably hardest out of the four. Okay, analyze is referring to how the elements and principles are used in your composition. So because you have the liberty of making choices, which is good, okay, you also need to know why and how you did that. So the elements of art are line, shape, form, value, space, color, and texture. The principles of design are balance, emphasis, movement, pattern, repetition, proportion, rhythm, variety, and unity. Okay, so you might not know what all of those words mean. So there's a separate worksheet that can explain visually what those words mean, but choose the ones that you feel like you used. So I would choose maybe 3 elements: line, shape, and color. And then I would figure out how I use them in order to create the principles. So I might focus on 1 or 2 principles. So one of the things you were supposed to do was organize your colors to create visual harmony or tempo. You were supposed to have some sort of repetition or rhythm within your artwork, and the lines and shapes you use might have variety. So you could talk about repetition. Okay, so I chose 3 elements and 3 principles. So when I'm looking at my artwork, I'm going to focus on describing or analyzing how I use line in my composition, how I use shape in my composition, and how I use color in my composition. So in this painting, okay, the way that they use line is they divided the composition into thirds. So they have this wiggly line that is a river, but the line itself creates this composition. So there's land over here, that's 1/3. There's a river in the middle, that's another third. And they have land over here, that's the last third. So that's how I would describe how they use line. And then I can go further into say that because they divided it up into thirds, you are creating the rivers emphasized because of the division of that composition. So I might have to choose a different principle for this particular painting. So another example I would give for this particular painting is they used a lot of bright colors and they created visual harmony by having them repeat. So they have yellow here, and then it bounces, and there's yellow here, and there's yellow here, and there's yellow down here. Okay, the same thing. There's a little green up here, there's green over here, there's green over here, there's green over here. That creates visual harmony. So again, choose a couple elements and describe how you use them in your composition. That's the analyzing. Okay, there's room on the back to finish writing for the analyzing step over there. Okay, let's see, can we see everything? All right, so then interpretation is personal. Okay, this is where you're selling me. Okay, so why did you make those choices? Okay, what does your painting mean to you? Okay, you had the liberty of choosing certain things in your painting and making certain decisions. So what makes it unique? Why is it original? You had a photographic subject and you interpreted it. So what is the purpose behind some of the color choices that you made? A lot of color choices impact symbols or feelings and should be done with purpose and intention. So if you had a landscape that was all of like green fields, and there was a river going through it, and you decided to make the river yellow and the fields red, that you chose those colors for a reason, and now they changed the composition completely because you changed the colors. So you went from a realistic setting of green grass, blue river to a symbolic composition of a yellow river with red grass. So by choosing those colors, the mood of the painting changes. So if you don't know specifically what colors mean, and you want to go further into the symbolic meaning behind colors, those are hanging up in the room, and you can ask me to point them out. But talk about what you intended the painting to be about. You can what did you want the viewer to think of, especially if you made it more abstract. It should be really specific. You should have had a specific reason why you made those choices. Okay, and then the last section is judgment. Okay, a lot of times people think that judgment means if they like or dislike it. It's not always about your personal taste. The question's asking, do you think your work of art is successful? So do you think that your composition is strong? Why or why not? Okay, and then you can go into if you like it, but you should explain why you like it or why you don't like it. And then you should also tell me what you think the best thing about your piece of work is and the worst thing about your work. Okay, what could you have done differently in order to make it better? So each of these sections, describe, analyze, interpret, and judge, should be at least 3 sentences minimum, but they should fulfill all the aspects of the questions. Okay, remember there's posters hanging up in the room that further describe what you should have in each section. Okay, for the description, everyone should have something similar with the medium, the scale, the influences, and then the subject matter might be on the back of your image. Take your time, make sure that everything is thoughtful and insightful, and if you have any questions, feel free to ask.